All right, but I guess before a bunch of people come in here and people start asking questions, I thought like a default thing we could talk about is just um, sort of a winter outlook. It's the start of winter.
Yes.
We're training. We're getting ready. People are saying it's La Nina this year.
Is that what they're
What
saying?
is your? Yeah, that's what I just saw online.
So
There's a good chance it's gonna be La Nina. So
people that don't know,
that
La Nina versus El Nino. Here in Hawaii, La Nina, more wind, consistent waves, smaller, rainier. The island could use some rain for sure. But El Nino, less wind, no rain, maybe less frequent swells, but gigantic swells. But I'm going to just dispute everything everyone's saying, including every forecaster, because I feel like the last 5 years, they've been completely wrong every year. Maybe they're right, but it's not translating because it's been like during the eddy 2022 the waves were as big as they could possibly get, or as big as I've ever seen it, and that was La Nina, and there was a ton of big swells that year. But now I feel like it's a good thing they're calling it La Nina because they've been wrong, so maybe it'll be El Nino.
Yeah, it really does not line up that well with. I feel like when we were kids, it used to.
It used to,
Remember,
but now
like
it doesn't.
2000, yeah, like 2004. Some of like the big, really big seasons. They're like, this is El Nino. It's gonna be huge, and it was massive every time. Like 2016, glassy and massive. Last year was supposed to be a historic year, but it was onshore every swell and wasn't even like that crazy big of swells anyway. So
To be honest, I think our memory, or even when we were kids, you're not actually as tuned in. And maybe they were El Nino. I just think that with forecasting, the confidence from either forecasters or even just people in general is so confident. At the end of the day, the ocean has the last say, or, Mother Nature's just changing. It's constantly changing out there. So every year is unique to itself at the same time.
totally. And let's see. Ian is asking, are you going to Portugal? What's the Portugal plans for this year?
Well, we have like possibly a Red Bull training camp, and it's coming up in about 2 weeks. I would go with you, Ridge, Ian Walsh, and we would go. And basically, the training camp was really fun last year because we just held our breath for a really long time and did all these underwater exercises. Got super competitive. We did trampoline training for all the aerial stuff, and I mean, it's all stuff we do here, but it's kind of fun just doing it somewhere else and then doing it with other insane athletes. We had Italo Ferreira come last year. We had, obviously Lucas Chumbo was there, Justine Dupont, Andrew Cotton, a bunch of the best big wave guys from there. But we also had Young Gun Crew, the up and coming big wave surfers that are taking on Nazaré. This year, it's a little bit bigger, and it was funny because when we were doing the trampoline training, it all escalated. I've done trampoline work. I could do like a bunch of different stuff on the trampoline. But the mystical double backflip wasn't like ever secured. And it was like this big mountain to climb. And we were trying to do it. And when you're with all these frothy, sendy guys, like Lucas in particular, as well as Italo, these guys they'll huck themselves before they figure out technically. And so our instructor, Trennan, who's like a professional ski coach for, Olympic teams, Canada, and then sometimes US, he basically was like, okay, these are the proper steps. You throw your arms up, tuck, and then open up, land on your back. That's a 1 1/4. And then, we do progressions, they're called. And then first thing, Italo just hucks as big as he could on an Olympic trampoline, which bounces a lot more than a traditional trampoline. He did 2.5, landed on his head. And,
Oh my
and then,
God.
but it opened the door to like, okay, doubles. And so immediately all we were doing were just double backflips. And I had a slight advantage because I know how to jump and time and the technical side a little bit more. Those guys were just hucking themselves, and it looked so scary. I'm like, are these guys going to break their necks? But they're pretty strong Brazilians, so it didn't like affect them at all.
Yeah, I'm terrified to try a double backflip. I still haven't done it. I feel like I could,
Oh,
but it's
you
just
could
like
do
that
it. The double backflip,
commitment.
it's just like learning your first backflip. It's scary and it's hard the first, or it's more scary than it is hard the first time. But then the first time you do a double, it's like just doing a single the first time. You just got to hold and tuck, and all of a sudden you see you're landing and you just land. But you get a lot of momentum, and I don't know, you want a nice open space and someone throwing a mat under you while you're learning.
Yeah, 100%. And the other cool thing about that training camp is that you get a lot of time on the ski at Nazaré, which is probably the hardest place ever to drive a ski, and just to have like the reps there, we go and do that. And then I'd imagine when you come back to Maui, it's going to feel a lot more, you're going to feel really comfortable in the waves here, because waves here honestly are a lot more predictable than what's going on over there.
Well, the Nazaré is just pure chaos. It's just a huge beach break, and I mean, it's in a way you can have it become a controlled chaos, because there's obviously the defined different peaks, and you can understand, okay, there's a refraction off the wall, the cliff, with a side wedge of a wave, and you start predicting those things. But if you're just thrown in there cold, and we're halfway across the world, those guys never come over here. I mean, they rarely even make it to Hawaii anymore because they're so entrenched in Nazaré, which is perfectly fine. But we're doing the Nazaré Tow Challenge, and you feel like you actually have to go there just to get used to the speed again of the wave, get used to driving the Sea-Doos in that sort of chaos cauldron of whitewater, and then, having it fresh in your mind before going to the competition. Because usually with the comp, you get such late notice from here in Hawaii. You land the day before, put your board together, and then the next morning you're out in 50 to 60 foot waves. So, I mean, it's probably a good idea we do that training camp. And in breaking news, Lucas Chumbo's not my tow partner anymore.
Damn.
Yeah, we had a decent run at the Quicksilver Festival back in France. It was a small wave surfing. It can get pretty decent size there, but it was small wave for the comp. We were leading it at one point, then we got 7th. And then I got home and I got a message from him saying that he was dropping me for Pedro Scooby, which I kind of understand because he's best friends with Pedro Scooby and they're with each other in Brazil every day, and they probably want an all Brazilian team. And then I'm all the way here in Hawaii, so I'm not like consistently at Nazaré towing with him. Might be different. That being said, Ridge, you're taking a back seat on this year's Nazaré Tow Challenge, and you're going to be our spotter. But can anyone guess who my new tow partner is for this prestigious tow and surfing event?
Yeah, drop your comments. Who do you think Kai should partner up with? But I think it's crazy that you guys, it's going to be trippy to not see you guys together out there. I think ever since I've been watching you surf Nazaré, it's been you and Chumbo, and I feel like you guys really know each other's styles and the types of waves you want to get. Also, the riding style is super similar. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see you partner up with someone else.
Well,
I think you'll still have a really good chance of winning. I think you're still the best guy out there. I can confidently say that, and I think your past performances prove it. I don't think that's like insane to say. So I don't think it'll hold you back much, but it'll probably be a learning curve to learn how to ride that wave with someone new.
Yeah,
I'd imagine.
Well, Lucas knows that wave really well, and he's goofy foot, so he surfs frontside to the predominant left. I felt like we never actually really needed to train on the water together all the time, because every time I tow him in, I get him in the wave of the day. And, he has gotten me into the wave of the day a few times when he's towed me. I feel like we know what we want. We're looking for the exact same thing. And so it was like, I feel like it was literally just plug and play when I would get there. So he probably didn't feel that way. Let's just pray there's a lot of rights. I want to go right out there for sure. All I can say is the tow partner I have is really incredible. And he's maybe a little less sketchy than Lucas. Lucas is insane, but he'll come save you no matter what, even if it means he's going to lose the jet ski. And I feel like a little bit of calculated risk is always, it's good. It's like, okay, well, sure, I might lose the jet ski and then we're really in trouble. So maybe wait for one wave to go over him and then come in to get him. But it's just different styles, different eras too. There's a couple hints right there, but no, I think,
Let's see
Huh?
People in the chat are spamming Nathan. They think it's Nathan. Can you say that it is him or isn't him?
Well, I mean, you know what? Nathan, first of all, hates towing. He absolutely hates it. If he could, and it's not that he hates towing surfing. He just, I think because he's from the North Shore and he's so used to just paddling pipe or Waimea and stuff, he's kind of locked into the slab tour and paddling the unpaddleable. And I mean, I remember the last time we did the Nazaré Big Wave Paddling Challenge. I think it was at 2018 or something. That was both Koa Rothman and Nathan Florence were both like, "Yep, we're never coming here again." And I think they've still stood by that sort of business that they'll never surf Nazaré again. Maybe if it's like 6 foot and small and like good, but not when it's like chaotically big. They all like Nathan goes to Ireland or he'll go to like down the coast to these other slab waves. So no, unfortunately it's not Nathan. Nathan he'd be really great. I think he just needs to spend a little bit of time on jet ski. He's still a little bit green for sure. Like, but the nice thing is you could tow him into just a 80-foot right out there and he would just pull in. And probably if he didn't make it, he'd laugh about it pretty quickly. But yeah, I don't know. He still needs some convincing to even hop on a jet ski, unless he's the one being towed in.
Yeah.
He doesn't like driving.
That's such a common theme. I feel like I've heard that so much where people go and just like have a really nuts experience at Nazaré and they're like, you know what? The risk to reward ratio at this wave is just not worth it. I'm never going back.
Well,
like I've heard that a lot of times actually.
You're dead right, because I feel like if I was approaching it maybe in a more traditional sense where, okay, I'm going to just ride a really big wave. I'll do some turns, but if you're not like really psyched on doing chop hops and like aerial tricks, the price is pretty different. I love competing, and that's like the only big wave event besides the Eddie Aikau now. Jaws Challenge is canceled. There's a couple little events here and there, but there's really no like proper big wave event anymore. So that's partially why. And I kind of like the challenge of going out there and being like, ooh, can I 360 off here? Can I flip off of that? Is there room for a double? And that makes it pretty fun. And I could understand Nathan's not super into that. He's not into straps either. So, it's the risk to reward. You have to go there with like your own goal. I think as soon as I run out of like the motivation to do tricks down the wave, I might probably like be okay not going there. Unless, everyone that is there is just looking for a Guinness Book of World Record, really. That's like what their sponsors and everyone really just cares about in Europe. So my approach, performance based a little bit. If I get lucky, great, I'll ride whatever comes in. But a lot of those guys are just like, I just want to go straight 60 miles an hour on a 90-foot wave.
Yeah, I think I'd be down to do if I ever have the opportunity to do the contest one day, but I think I'm a little bit scarred from that one of the first contests. What year was that? 2020?
2020 was the first one that I did.
Dude, that was really gnarly. Like, that was so absurdly big and people almost died, and it was just like, it looked like the hardest place ever to drive a jet ski, and I'm just like, dude, I'm not up to that caliber quite yet.
I honestly think it's more scary driving there than surfing. Because you have so much responsibility when you're driving, because you're in charge of someone else. Like you're someone else's life's on the line. It's not like Jaws is the perfect big wave because it's the easiest wave to tow into, and you tow someone in. If they fall, you go in. It's very like, perfect lines coming in, big gaps between the white waters. You grab them, and then you just turn right and you're in the channel. At Nazaré, you pick the guy up, and then you spend 15 minutes on the inside going over 30-foot white waters, and you're like, there's no way I can make it over, but you have no choice. There's rocks behind you. There's like a slabbing Waimea shore break. There's cross waves, and you got to commit, and you're just like, oh, it's so stressful driving, especially if you're not just an absolute cowboy, because those guys, like, a lot of the guys just thrive on being in there because they kind of like the calamity.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, I just got to get out, and we got to get out perfectly and not damage anything and like not flip. And, so riding the board, at least when you can blame your partner if you lose the ski and they're driving, because you're like, well, I was just a passenger.
And I've seen you do it multiple times, which would freak me out is that I think Lucas, I've seen him like he's like towing you in on like borderline first peak, like 1.5 peak, and he's probably expecting you to go left. And then you see that the right's gonna be good, and you're just going right, and you're kicking out like freaking 100 feet from the cliff,
Oh
and he
my
has to come
God.
in and skate.
I've
Dude,
had
that is
so many
the
times where
scariest thing ever.
I've towed in and I'm going right and the cliff's getting closer and I start seeing the color of people's shoes hanging off the cliff. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, if he does not pick me up right now, I am going on the rocks. And I'll probably be fine. Might get a little injured here and there. I mean, you go out there and you have to have that self-belief that everything's going to work out. Otherwise, you will think you're going to die because it's just so gnarly. And so you have to have that almost false sense of security between your ears. But I mean, the last contest I did with him, I was supposed to go left, but I did a 360 trying to get any score because the waves weren't that great for this event. And I had no choice but to go right. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hit the cliff. And I skip out at the bottom. And when I skipped out at the bottom, it was really because I was just looking at the cliff and I was getting closer and I kind of just let it go because I was like, if I fall here, then I maybe won't get pounded into the rocks. I'll like pop up next to the rocks. And underwater, it felt like I was so close to the rocks underwater. And my jersey got thrown over the pull tabs and I couldn't pull my vest. So I didn't pull my vest, swam up old school. And then by the time I came up, Lucas was there. And if you could see in the video, he's not going straight in because if he went straight in, we would have gone straight into the rocks. He actually went to the left, but when he was going left, a side chop or kind of like a refraction off the cliff hit the ski and it broached. And broaching means the jet ski kind of goes to the left really hard or goes to the right. It just picks a direction. And he bails, and I'm on the sled. And when you're on the sled, there's like this, I don't want to say it's G-force, but you're kind of stuck on the sled. It's like hard to get away from it. You're like, momentum, like you're stuck on it. And I'm like trying to scurry off the back because I see him fly off. And then I see the lip. And I just slide off as the ski goes over in front of me. And then I get stuck behind it. And I'm like underwater thinking I'm going to get hit by this, 1,100-pound machine. And then I pop up. And all of a sudden, I don't see where the machine went. I'm like, it should come up before me. And then all of a sudden, like a submarine or really a torpedo, it comes shooting straight out like a missile. And it was probably like 10 feet away and went up in the air and then landed perfectly, like perfect. I mean, the lid was roping and stuff. And then I look over and Chumbo's like perfectly fine because he didn't even get pounded. And all he's yelling is like, grab my phone. Because he had like a little waterproof case. And his phone's floating like 15 feet the other direction from me. And I just start swimming as hard as I could. I'm already so tired because I'm jet lagged. I came in at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon the day before. And I'm like, this is like kind of a repeated pattern because the year before, Lucas went through a whitewater and ran me over and broke 2 of my ribs. And then I was laying there like, send me back to the airport. I'm out of here. And then we ended up winning anyway, but it was because of the cold water and the adrenaline. But I was probably out for a month after that because my rib was like, literally I had 2 broken ribs. But
yeah, I remember that.
That being said, it was, it was just pure chaos. And that's the one thing. Lucas is probably the best out there, maybe at driving, maybe at, riding the wave, of course. But then when it comes to maybe like the rescue, he's so sendy that I've honestly gotten more pounded trying to ride the jet ski with him than actually just the wave itself.
I could see that.
I might, if I don't get destroyed this next event and everything just works out, I'll know that it maybe wasn't me the whole time.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Speaking of nuts incidences when it comes to surfing, Infinity Dragon asks, can we see the cracked helmet?
Here's the cracked helmet. Yeah, right there.
Damn.
Yeah, so that was like... So I think part of the reason why Lucas dropped me was because last year they ran the Nazaré Challenge a week after I hit my head out a pipeline. Talking to the doctors and the lifeguards, they said if I didn't have this helmet on, I probably would have died because it hit me like in the side of the head, which is like by your temple. That's someplace that's just complete lights out. And if it's strong enough to, break this, Gath helmet that is tried and true out of pipeline. Yeah, I mean, and the argument could be said, like, when you do have a helmet, it kind of throws you off underwater a little bit. Like, it's not that you're disoriented underwater, but you definitely are wearing something and it like kind of pulls your head around. And One could argue maybe I wouldn't have hit my head if I didn't have the helmet on. That was Nathan's argument. We talked about it at length because he chooses not to wear a helmet because he thinks he'll hit his head. And there's some truth to that. I've definitely felt like every time I wear my helmet, I do hit my head. When I don't, I somehow don't hit my head. But I'm grateful to have had this thing on because it would have definitely would have been the end of Kai. So a week later, the Nazaré challenge went off, and Lucas is like, "Oh, you ready to go?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm literally like bedridden right now. I have like severe depression. I can't even mentally function. I can't look at a screen." And his brother had the same thing happen to him. It was a little worse because he didn't even have a helmet on at back door. He got hurt like maybe 3 weeks before I did, and he's only just coming back now, which is crazy. So I couldn't go, and then he went with Scooby, and then Pedro Scooby was like, "Hey, let's just team up full time." And then he's like, Lucas is like, "Hey, you didn't do last year." I was like, "Bro, I was like almost died."
I was dead, bro.
I almost died, but just language barrier, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it happens.
But everything happens for a reason.
Let's see. Daikini asks, "Do you think surf helmet design can be improved at all? Seems like that helmet would create drag."
Yeah, so those, the theory is like these helmets, this is what Tom Carroll was riding in like 1980 all the way up to, everyone's still, all the kids that are out there, even the OGs that surf pipe forever, like Jamie O'Brien, Kalani Chapman, those guys still wear this Gath helmet. Nothing has changed with it. Okay, the EVA is maybe a little bit different than it used to be, or I guess this is just kind of rubber. They're so uncomfortable, and my head is honestly pretty big. Hopefully not in like a cocky way, but like an actual physical way. It's like pretty large. The helmets can be so much better. I've started to sort of like work with a couple helmet companies. One in particular, Whip. They do all the helmets for the America's Cup. They do some really rad like impact stuff, and they're working on a surf helmet now. And they had a couple prototypes that were stupid light. Where like stupid light in a good way, like where you didn't feel anything on your head. And, you want just enough in surfing to hit your head once and not die and like save you. And then you get a new helmet. You don't want this big bulky thing that's maybe a little more robust, but it's going to throw you off. And I don't know, I feel like you tweak your neck. Currently the best one on the market, I think right now that is just available. Well, I don't know if it's available to the public yet, but to most surfers, if you ask, is the Oakley helmet. And they took a radically different design approach. This is like inspired by the bike helmet. So they kind of made an exoskeleton around your head. There's like a lot of like holes and stuff. And basically it's so water can be let through and let out. So it doesn't balloon on your head. Number one complaint.
Yeah, I like that one.
Most surfers is, when you're underwater, it feels like it's lifting off your head because the water gets under and has nowhere to escape. And their thought, I think before, was just, if water can't get in, nothing needs to push it out, but water still gets in through the sides. This thing actually feels really good. I don't know. I don't think I look great in it because of my huge face. So it just looks a little funny. I definitely feel like I'm wearing a bike helmet. The ear coverings have actually proven to be really important because, you can bust your eardrums really hard from hitting the side. So I like that they have a huge hole so you can hear clearly. When I see, the world champion Katie Simmers, also, the pipe master, a pipe winner, and then you see Griffin Colapinto and these guys using it, Jack Robinson, and I would say maybe the black version is a lot more understated. You don't notice as much, but because I'm sponsored by Red Bull, I'm running the Red Bull thing. I will use this for sure if I go to Pipeline. I probably won't use it if I go to Nazaré or somewhere like that because you're in really deep water. You can get hit by your board, of course, but I always throw it in my bag. And if I feel like a gut feeling like I need it, I'll just throw it on. Like, it's fine. But I always just have it
sure.
Just in case. Like if we're in Portugal, if Nathan's like, "Hey, let's go surf a slab somewhere," the slabs he rides over there is stupid shallow. And
so
I maybe
scary.
don't have the same confidence he has in pulling off every drop. So I'm wearing a helmet.
Yeah. And you could check out this comment here. I think this really speaks well to why I think we're learning and you've especially learned a lot, and I'm sort of on this journey too of like really trying to understand what some of these wipeouts does to your brain.
Oh my god,
and it
terrible.
can have it like you can speak to that, right?
Oh
like
yeah,
it can literally make your brain like you can
scrambled eggs,
scrambled eggs, like anxiety, depression, all of that. And it's because of just like freaking smacking your head on the water so much. So if you could speak to that, that'd be pretty cool.
Well, you ask yourself when you're out there, you're like, how could I, or later on, how could I be so anxious and depressed after doing something that is so happy and fulfilling and exciting and beautiful, you know? And some of the worst wipeouts that I've had are not on the biggest waves, because sometimes the biggest waves actually have the water gets aerated quicker, and the big turbulence under the surface is so big that your body sort of fits in the cogs of that swirling, hurricane. So there's different little hurricanes under there, and you kind of fit between those cogs. And when it's smaller, you don't fit as much, and there's a lot more blue water, and the blue water is like denser, harder. And so my worst wipeouts have actually been from atmospheric changes, going from like 0 feet underwater to 50 feet underwater. And it's not like you're literally 50 feet underwater, but the denser water gets dragged from the trenches and the channels and pulled up. And it happens so fast that there's not a real density change from that, different depth. And you basically, in colder water too, water is of course more dense, but you feel like the sides of your head are being compressed in, and a helmet won't help you with that. It won't help you at all. You'd have to be in like a spacesuit for it not to affect you. And sometimes the 12 to 15 footer out at Jaws is way worse. That being said, they're a little bit of like, it's part of the surfing big waves. It's a little bit inevitable that something like that's going to happen. Albie Lair had something happen to him like that when he got lipped in the head by a giant wave, and I don't even know if it was just the lip hitting him, but it was also just being compressed by all that blue water. There's ways to go about it. We're living in a great time where I think a lot of those head injuries could be fixed. I've been going to Brain Health Hawaii. There's other people that are doing stuff around the world. In California, Wave Neuro is one where you can get a portable system and have it done at home. But it's basically they put these electronic pads on your head, and it feels like someone's just tapping you right in the forehead. And it's for only 30 minutes. But they can pretty much erase previous concussions, because most people that get concussed and recover and don't fully like get rid of it, there's like a scar left over on your brain a little bit, and they can see that. But with this sort of technology, it can erase that. And so hopefully it'll leave many of us that participate in these kind of sports without TBI later on, or, even just depression or stuff. Because I've definitely seen like old school big wave surfers like get super grouchy and depressed because I think they actually suffer from brain injury and they don't know it.
Yeah. No, I'm actually going to see the Brain Health Hawaii team on Wednesday, and you've been telling me to go do that for a while. I've had my share of head smacks and mini concussions that I don't even think it's like necessarily like, if you have one big concussion in your life, it's easy for the brain to recover from it. But the problem is if you have multiple concussions over and over and over again, even if they're small, like in one session, if you fall a few times, like you could do some damage to your brain. So I want to go just to...
It's like in football, right? It's like tons of small hits, not just like one big hit. It's like the small ones. And I just think everyone, even if you haven't had a brain injury, you should just get your brain scanned anyway. It's like, it's totally worth it. Like, how valuable is A, your performance, but then B, of course, is like your life, and you learn a lot about yourself because everything is broken down so much on how your brain works that you can start to sort of almost hack yourself, like biohack yourself. Be like, oh, okay, well, I've always felt like that was maybe a weakness, but now I know how to kind of approach it because there's a way now. It's not just this cloudy fog that you're trying to be like, well, is it just how I feel, or is it an actual functioning part of my brain? Like, what's going on?
Totally. Yeah. and I think it's just important. Yeah. Just like I don't feel like I have any major issues related to brain injury, but I really just being in this sport, I just want to get ahead of it.
Smart.
I don't want to be like 50 and be like, whoa, my brain is destroyed. Like, I wish I would have done something about it earlier. So that's my motivation. Let's see if we could throw another question up here. This one's for me. Is that a carbon board behind you? Do you guys think the carbon wraps are worth it? So that board behind there, I like to keep it in my room because it is like my favorite board of all time. It's my Jaws tow board. I think it's about 14 pounds. and I've had it for since 2021, and it's still my go-to. I use it every time, and the great thing about the carbon wraps is that they are bulletproof. That thing looks brand new, and I've put it through some pretty crazy situations. Luckily, she hasn't gone on the rocks yet, which really destroys boards, but just banging around on the jet ski, everything. And we put lead weights in them. So they're really heavy, but they're extremely dense, and the carbon makes them so hard. And that's why we use them for big waves, because they're indestructible. You could have them for years. And I hope I have that board for another 20 years, but I'm sure it'll get destroyed on the rocks at one point.
If you keep using it, it might.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. Let's see. I'm a surfer, and I think that the worst feeling is the sets on the head and going down for long times. Do you have any breath tips for staying in the water for a long time? What's your thoughts on that, Kai?
I think, it's really like a fear of the unknown, like the fear of being underwater, because that's kind of an unknown. Like, what's gonna happen when I'm down there? That's that fight or flight sort of feeling. That you're kind of feel that flight before. You're like, you feel trapped, and you're like, oh, like, and there's not really any fighting you can do. You kind of got to go with it. So really teaching yourself to like let go and relax. Like, as soon as a wave hits you, almost absorb it with your body. Like, you're going to allow it to go through you, because that saves so much energy, and you'll find your lung capacity. It feels like you can stay under way longer. But if you kind of get hit and you fight it at first, all of a sudden you feel a shortness of breath, like in your lungs, and you feel the urge to breathe. So really, you want to almost go limp. You want to be aware of where your board is, if someone's dropping in or if someone bailed in front of you, that sort of thing. I mean, the best tip I could say is work on your negative breath holds just at home. It could be on a couch. If you do decide to do it in a pool, always have someone that's on the side of the pool watching you and not scrolling on their phone or not paying attention. There's, one of the best foil surfers recently passed away because he was doing breath hold training in Tahiti, and people were watching him, but they weren't paying attention to him, and he ended up just drowning in front of them. So that's really important. But you can do these negative breath holds, which is basically you breathe up for a minute to do, let's say, a minute, and you breathe up. So it's maybe you start off with 10-second inhale through your nose, pause for a second, and then 10 seconds out. You do that like up to 50 seconds. And then the last 10, you just calmly breathe. And then you blow all of your air out. You basically exhaust your lungs. You go, and then you just hold. And you can do it on the couch. You can do it. Don't do it driving. You can do it on an airplane. Do it somewhere where you're not like going to crash. But if you do that, your lungs get really, your lungs get really used to not needing air. And I'll typically do, as just a warm-up exercise before longer breath holds, I'll do those negatives, but 2 minutes. And I'll do laps in the pool. And you're just trying to swim as slow as you can, but you want to get across the pool as fast as you can, but as efficient as you can. So you're not kicking, you're doing one big swoop, and you're gliding, and you're looking at the bottom of the pool, and you're seeing how long you're gliding. And right as you're about to stop, you do another one, and you have no air in your lungs, but your circulatory system has about 2 minutes of air going through it, so you really don't even need your lungs. It's really just like this reflex that your body's like always wants to have this reserve of air going on. So if you do the negative stuff and do a minute on the couch, work up to 2 minutes. Some people do it longer. They're pretty savage. Then you watch. You'll get caught inside. You'll just barely get a sip of air. And then you'll be like, oh, this is totally fine. I'm completely used to it. It's one of those things you just got to get used to. It's like doing the ice bath. It absolutely sucks for everyone the first few times, but you do it consistently. It just doesn't hurt as bad. I don't know what it is. It's like anything in life.
Yeah, and something that I do on the couch as much as I can is I do the CO2 tables, and I know freedivers use those a lot. And for those that don't know what a CO2 table is, I have it basically on an app, but basically you do your first breathe up is about 2 minutes. So you really oxygenate your whole body, fill up your lungs, and then you hold your breath for a certain amount of time. Usually it's about half your max breath hold. So say my max breath holds around like 3.5 minutes. I'll do, a minute, 45 seconds or whatever. And so you do that breath hold every time, but the difference is you do that breath hold 8 times. But in between each breath hold, your recovery time gets smaller and smaller. So by the end, you only have 15 seconds of a breathe up while in between doing these minute 45 breath holds. And what that does is it builds up an absurd amount of CO2 in your lungs. And CO2 is what makes you feel that sort of burning pain sensation. It's not necessarily a lack of oxygen, it's the buildup of CO2. Because when you inhale that, all that oxygen gets converted to CO2. And that's what triggers your like I need to breathe. So doing that exercise really gets your body used to dealing with the CO2. And when you're getting smoked by a big wave, a lot of times you're either falling on a negative breath, your heart rate is racing, so your body burns that oxygen, turns into CO2 really fast. And you have to be really comfortable with that burning situation, burning feeling, because if you give in to that burning feeling underwater and you take a breath, you die. And then that's not what we want.
The exercise is also really good at teaching you how to purge CO2. So there's like a breathing technique where you can purge it all out, and you really got to learn like how to breathe like a baby, which is, they breathe from their stomach, not their chest. But most adults, if not every adult, naturally breathe from their chest, which is up high. And so all that CO2 can like sit at the bottom of your lungs. So using your stomach, you learn how to purge. And so sometimes, like if I get really racked by a big wave, I'll purge before I take my big breath hold. I'll go,
yeah.
And you're basically like pushing you don't want to do it till you hyperventilate and you get lightheaded, but you want to do it enough so you pump all that CO2 out of your lungs. And then when you do a nice big breath hold, the oxygen feels like it really is settled in. It's not like stirring inside.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Let's throw another question up. Can you give us an update on the Piahi film?
Oh yeah, so the Piahi film, it's been done for a while. One of the guys that we've been working on with the movie, it's been a lot of there's been a bit of drama on that side. On my side, it's been finished, all good. I did what we have to do, but it was a really good lesson because there's like hands that get involved on these projects that basically just hold it up because they see it going to the highest place possible. But at a certain point, you just got to like let it be seen and be shown. And that was a really good experience. I learned a lot. And I wouldn't say I'm the best actor ever. I tried my best, and when I watch it, I definitely cringe. But at the same time, I think anyone would when they're just like, I'm so used to being myself and just being real. And in this, I had to play like a different sort of character. So who knows when it comes out? I'm praying next year. We've been on the case. It's been something that's been working on the background a lot, but it's a really good lesson on, basically how you get involved with these sort of projects. And I'm no longer just saying yes to everything that sounds cool, which in a perfect world, you want to be able to just do everything. Because, it sounds really cool, but, people start seeing things differently at the end, and, it all comes down to money, and it's like, oh, this really sucks. We just want to make a sick movie that was just fun and enjoyable and, maybe sends a good message, but it's not meant to necessarily change the world. It's entertainment. So yeah, hopefully I've been waiting to give an update on that, sort of feel like everyone sort of forgot about it, so I haven't been asked in a while.
Yeah, I thought the cuts of the movie I saw, I really liked it, and I thought it had a lot of potential. I think it was on its way to getting to where it needed to be, and I agree with you. I think the lesson is, I think we're at an age now too, and like we have enough expertise and been doing films a lot. I think next time we do it, I think we'd probably want to have a more hands-on sort of approach to it. Because we're capable, we've done a lot of productions. I've worked on a ton of productions, and you see like a lot of times, you see people that have like, oh, they've been doing it for years. They've done films, and you're like, okay, I'll just trust them. And then you see how everything operates and how everything's going.
It's not even the film
like,
itself, right? It's like the behind the scenes stuff.
It's the production of it, and you just realize like, hey, we're capable of doing that too,
and we'll go into it without the ego of it. It's like, okay, no, we got to stay true to the art and the story, and like we want people to see it and do it in the right way where everyone sort of benefits.
Especially when it comes, I would love to see, I think there's a few movies that did big wave surfing well, Hollywood wise. I think like Chasing Mavericks is a good example. what's the other one? Surf's Up, obviously.
Oh my
is the
God,
goated.
that's my favorite.
It's such a good movie. But I think what a lot of big wave surf films get wrong is that just the people making it just don't understand, and they like kind of bastardize it and make it cheesy. But
Well,
I
and
think
then they also just even the characters. Like I think there was that they always kind of go on that stereotypical like, we're here to ride a big wave and this is what we're meant to do, and like it's just this like caveman sort of approach, and
it's not very human.
It's not very human, and it's some of the most like I think most tuned in people in big wave surfing are sometimes the most sensitive, which is interesting, and they have the biggest range of emotions because they're usually laughing, and not that they're crying, but they're like there's a big range of emotions, and it's and they have to be that sensitive because they're so tuned into their environment around them. And there's I was trying in this film to put more like relaxed humor and like excitement and whatever, like and trying to make it more like authentic to how my experience is, and let the drama come from the surf, but then also come from the scenarios that you have to deal with and how do you approach it. But when you work with people that don't do it or understand it, they think, well, that's not believable, and I'm like, but that's how it really is. It's like one day I want to make the Top Gun version of big wave surfing, because we can do it. It's just teaming up with the right people, having the right budget. Because on this Pe'ahi film, I think I have to hand it to the director. He did a great job on making the film feel 10 times bigger than the budget we had. I mean, we had hundreds of thousands of dollars, fortunately, but to make like a really good movie with that amount of budget is tremendously difficult. And with the film, it does feel like it had maybe a $10 million budget for sure. And I think because we kind of got lucky too with the conditions, every time we went to film out at Pe'ahi, we got to film like in location, not on like a green screen or any of that, right? We got to film literally, like when we were doing our lines in the channel, there was 50-foot waves breaking in the background. And it was a bit distracting for me because I just wanted to go surfing. And they're like, no, read this line. And I'm okay, can I do it? I want to go back out there. And you could probably see it in my acting, but that was the cool thing. And that's why part of me really wants people to see the film, because there's this authenticity that I think a lot of major films lack. Like you watch like Point Break 2, for example, and it's just like, oh my God, like they're either on a soundstage and then they take footage that they filmed of a random surfer and then they green screen their face off and then they make the wave look bigger, and it's just so inauthentic. I'm like, you could do all that in camera. You just have to have the right people doing it and the right producers, like, and the right director to like see it and be patient.
The insane thing about Point Break 2 was that remember that swell they got in 2011? It was at Jaws. Was
the last
massive.
time Laird surfed Jaws.
Yeah, it was
legendary.
Huge. And I remember like we saw them filming, our friend Rush was doing some of the stunt work for it. It was like, this movie is going to be insane. This is going to be the big wave surfing movie. And then we saw it in the theater and they took like the wave and just ruined it. They could have just used the in-camera shot.
It was literally like
epic.
60, 70-foot Pe'ahi Jaws. Laird took off on like the biggest closeout you've ever seen, straightened out and got annihilated. Remember that, Ridge? But he was just like, Laird's a big guy, especially when his arms are out, and he's at the bottom in this wave. It was onshore winds is why it closed out. He probably would have gotten the best barrel of all time, but it was like onshore, and so it like closed out, and Ian Walsh ended up getting a wave that should have won the big wave awards, but he ended up didn't getting that award, but he got like this monster wave. He was one of the stunt surfers, and it was so big, and he rode it flawlessly as he would. And Rush was doing like, he was driving this boat and they were abandoning the boat and getting picked up by this Huey helicopter. And I was watching, I'm like, this movie is going to be the craziest movie I've ever seen. It looks like Point Break. It's gray skies. It's 80-foot waves. It's side on shore. It looks like it's giving the greatest homage to the first Point Break when, Bodie's about to paddle out to go surf Massive Bells Beach, and Keanu was like, his character's on the beach or whatever. That being said, you're right, Ridge. They completely butchered it because they didn't have any idea, and I don't know if anyone just told them, like, look, this absolutely sucks. Because they did Chopu too, and it was terrible. And no offense to anyone else, but it's like that saying in surfing, like only a surfer knows the feeling. You really got to have
100%.
And it's not just on the water. Like they had great people on the water. They had Rush. They had like, the Keolanas. They had all the best people you could have, like making sure what they were filming there. But what you got to have is someone that understands film and understands surfing or water sports in general to be in the editing room and be with the director and be like, because it's nuanced, right? Surfing is like so nuanced with like little things, like only we notice it. And maybe the larger audience, they won't notice it, but they do notice it. They just don't realize they notice it. They're like, why does this feel so authentic versus feel so like scripted? And that's why I think they don't do more surfing movies, because they can't figure it out. And it's only because only a surfer knows the feeling. You have to be like intertwined in the culture and the experience to get it and make it look good.
Yeah, I think that's what the movies that I mentioned earlier, Chasing Mavericks and Surf's Up, both of those movies really trusted. I mean, you could say maybe they didn't get it perfect, but
I mean, Chasing Mavericks did really good. They did really good. There was still a bunch of stuff that we could point out, but of all the other movies, I think actually Surf's Up did it the best. It was an animated penguin movie, but as far as the lore, and they made fun of all of surfing history, which is insane. That's what we like it so much. But they nailed it, and they nailed the characters. They nailed all of it so good.
There's a reason why Surf's Up is remained in like sort of the pop culture atmosphere since then. It's like that movie was put out in 2007, and you go on TikTok anytime, and people are still making like Cody Maverick edits, and it's not even by surfers. It's becoming
like a cult animated classic.
It's one of the best animated movies of all time, and I think it's partially because it really captured the feeling of being a surfer, the spirit of the surfer, of being a surfer, and like those sessions where him and Big Z go out and like are cruising together. Like that's what it feels like to have like an insane session, and that's what it feels like to get barreled, and that's what it feels like to get big waves.
If I'm getting like, you could say this about the younger arms, but I'm gonna just attribute it to myself because it's my own experience. Like when I was coming up surfing Pe'ahi Jaws, I would say Big Z was like Dave Kalama. Like Dave Kalama lives up in Kula, which is up like 5,000 feet on our 10,000 foot mountain, and he's just like so chill and mellow, and he's like kind of fun. He's really funny, and then but he's not like it's not like this is what we're here to do. We put on this earth to ride these waves. Like he's just like, I just 2 foot to 100 foot. The fun's all the same, and I love 1 foot wave. Like he's like, why would you want to go do that comp? Like that's silly. Like it's like he's like that, and then you're this young gun that's just like, I want to win it all. I want to do this. I want to do that, and he's like, whoa, chill. Just it's gonna work out, man. Like it's all good. Dave doesn't talk like that, but it's the same sort of feeling.
Yeah, and he's like a shaper too. And didn't he give you tips growing up where he's like, with the grain?
Oh my gosh, the best scene in the code is like, he's like, and I'm like chopping into the blank, and he's just like, with the grain. Like Big Z. Yeah. Literally, I had my Big Z moment. I was Cody, he was Big Z, and I was up at his house, and it was 2012, and I'm like, I want to shape the best stand-up paddleboard ever made because I want to win the world title at Sunset Beach next month. And Dave's like, whoa, okay, well. And he was at the time, I was sponsored by Nash, and he started doing a little bit of shaping and, with Nash, and he'd been shaping for already a bit. And I was like, I want to shape. And so I went up there, and he's like, okay, here it is. You can use whatever you want. And I just started going at it. And he's like, whoa, slow down. And then it was funny because he'd start doing it and just kind of keep going. And then I'd be like, Dave, can I do it? It was like same thing as like Cody, where he's like, with the grain. He's like in the flow state. And then he's like, wait, and then, the funny thing is he really, it was a collab shape. It was, I consider it my first shape. We should find a photo or footage of that board, but it was like the first shape I ever did, but it was really like a collab with Dave. Like he really, I did what I wanted, but he like helped me clean up. He was like cleaning up the mess I left behind. I ended up winning Sunset Beach on that board, and it's still a sick board, but yeah, that was an iconic moment. That was my, Cody Maverick Big Z thing.
Yeah, so this question ties in well to asking about what the relationship looks like. Say let's look at your modern relationship. Keith Tabula is our main shaper. Yep. What is that looking like nowadays, especially as you're become an accomplished shaper yourself?
It's really interesting. I think with shapers, everyone can make an insane board. Everyone makes incredible boards. It comes down to like what exactly you're looking for. A lot of the best surfers will go to shapers that already have something that they're looking for. Because most pro surfers, they're so focused on just maybe the art form. They're the paintbrush on the canvas. They're just so focused on doing it. They're not so much worried about like the subtle things about like what makes the board work. They're just like, hey, I want the rail to hold longer through the turn, or I want it to be more pivoty. And then the shaper interprets that. I'm like, oh, if I put a little more rail curve around the fins, it'll loosen up. Or maybe if I'm straighten it out just a little bit, it'll be a little more drivey. It could be entry rocker. It could be, where the apex is, where the rock or the touching point is. Forward is going to be a little more drivey, a little back is going to be a little bit more under your feet and lighter. So there's like little things. It's like, so for example, working with Keith is great because Keith has like zero ego to ideas. And when I first started working with him, I could go in there with the most out of pocket ideas and be like, can we really try this? And he'd be like, sure, let's do it. Like no argument. And in the past, I've gotten to work with some incredible shapers, but it's one of those things you go to them for their craft and what they think works really good. And
yeah,
I outgrew a lot of shapers because especially in big waves, I'd start riding their boards and I'd be like, gosh, it feels really good. But, I'm feeling like I need a little bit more edge forward from the fins, or I don't like the V. Can we do a single to double to V out the tail? Because I want the board to feel more like a windsurfer. Can we have a little bit less entry rocker and more tail rocker? Or you know what? Bump the nose up just a little bit. And that sort of feedback, they're like, whoa, like what's going on there? It's like, I know I'm the shaper. Just let me do my thing. And traditionally, when I got into big wave surfing, especially paddle surfing, only every big wave gun had V bottoms. And V bottoms feel very safe. They feel very stable. They're very slow. They're not great at like being super hyper reactive. And they do that because most surfers aren't used to the speed of a windsurfer or the chattering feeling of the board. And they were all made out of like these really, huge stringers, polyester, blanks, PU blanks and polyester resin. I kind of went in there, and with Keith, I was like, from his windsurfing background as well, it's like, can we just make a carbon wrapped board? And I want basically a windsurfing rocker on this thing. I want a windsurfing bottom contour, and I want an aerodynamic nose so the thing flies straight when I airdrop. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So working with him was really cool. And still you reach a limit to, how I'm very particular. Like, for example, I just shaped a board and the fins came out from the glasser just a little bit too far back from my quads. And I was surfing with Keith yesterday. And I basically was like, Keith, can I send it back to the factory and can we move it up like a half an inch or even a quarter of an inch? Because that much can make a difference. And I'm pretty in tune with it just from doing all these sports and feeling like maybe I haven't always been the most talented surfer out of the box, but where I get a lot of my performance gains on people is just having the best equipment built for me. Sometimes it doesn't work for other people, but that's what led me into shaping. And Keith is so gracious and cool. He's just absolutely let me shape. He's given me tips when I've asked for tips. And then he builds them all. So, I've glassed a board or two and that's fun, but it comes down to the time consumption that is required to do something like that. And I want to spend most of my time in the water. So the time that's not spent in the water and when my kids are asleep, I can go shape and have a board and they can build the thing to my specs and whatever. And so that's been really cool. But the reason why I've kind of gotten to shaping is because I can't verbalize necessarily what I'm feeling. And then trying to translate that to someone too is like, no matter what, there's a middle man that's involved there, like he uses his hands to do it. And we always get really close. Sometimes it's perfect. But a lot of times you get a board and you're like, gosh, I wish I could have just taken this little piece off right here. And you only see it once it's done, of course.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've been shaping all my boards. And it's been super fun. And it's been fun to get criticism from people that are like, well, this is never going to work, like when they see the board. I haven't used it yet. And I've shaped 17 boards now. And, it's funny to say, and I've not had one dud. They've all been blades. And
That's actually crazy.
The reason why is because I don't know how to shape, but I know what I want. And so it might take what a normal shaper could do in 30 minutes, I can do in 6.5 hours, but I won't stop until I get exactly what I want. And because I'm the one riding it and I'm performing at a high level in, certain conditions and whatever, I know exactly what is required or what I want. And I'm obviously, when I do finish the boards, I'm like, oh, I can make it better by doing this. I could do that. And, you pick up on other people's equipment. You're like, oh, that's a good idea there. I'm going to include that in the next one. But I'm stoked because it's almost like I've spent a lifetime up to this point gaining all the research and understanding of what makes a board work really good. Now it's just translating it with my hands. And yeah, the finished work it's like maybe not as clean. The glasses have been complaining about like, well, your rail band isn't like just perfectly the whole way. And I'm like, dude, it's good enough. Like, just please just glass it so I can. And so I've been having really fun with that. And so not to just continue on the subject, but it gets me really excited.
No, yeah, I've been just seeing you shaping, and you shaped me a board, which was super sick. And I've realized like how little I know about surfboards. I think I'm one of those surfers that really just feels the feeling and has like a hard time translating it to the actual physical attributes of the board. It's like so minute and it's so technical. You could change, there's so many different variables. If you change one little thing, the board feels completely different. And if you change multiple things at the same time, you have no idea what made the board feel like that. It's like so much more complex than I ever realized.
I mean, that's how, and when I started shaping, I even realized that more, because you always tell the shaper like, oh, can you just do this? And they have to like, they can't just add something. You got to like change how the rail is. Like, for example, I've been always like adamant about having a really flat shortboard deck. I want a really flat deck because it's super forgiving. And it just feels really good under my feet, just for whatever reason. And most shortboards have quite a bit of dome in it. And that's to get the rails a certain way. And so the rails feel knifey enough, but then they also like slice through the water. And you can't have a flat deck and have that same rail. So you have to think of a way to like change it. So for me, I added a little more foam on the rail, and I'm used to, having pretty, full rails from my other sports like windsurfing and stand-up and stuff and big wave surfing. So I took what would normally be like 2.4 inches thick in the middle, brought it down to 2.3, but then moved that same foam a little more to the rail because that's where, from a flat deck, it has to curve. So I basically have the same rail I normally kind of would with a 2.4 inch thick in the middle board, but I just redistributed the foam just a little bit. And now I have a flat deck with a semi-similar rail, and that is just how I approach doing it. And my ultimate goal when I started shaping is don't get too complicated. If I was to go down the list of what makes a good board is the rocker is like the number one important. The second would be the rail rocker, or rail curve as they call it, because that's usually different. If you put a concave in a shortboard, which a standard shortboard feels best, maybe just single concave all the way through, the rail curve is there's going to be more rail curve. And that's what kind of gives it that real zing off the bottom and off the top, whereas the concave gives you that speed and lift. And so it goes like rocker, rail curve, and then I would say for me, it's foiling. So really thin nose through, foiled really clean, and then super thin tail. Then the next part would be maybe the rail, and then the bottom contour, really. Actually maybe the contour before the rail. The rail, like I've had some terrible rails before, but if you have everything else good, the rail doesn't matter as much. Because the foiling is sort of like just as important as like the rail outline. If you have a really good full board but a really like full rail, you can kind of cheat it. Like the tail will really sit in and the nose will really knife in, and you can't have too full of rail over the whole board if the board's foiled really well. There would only be one section by your front foot that'd be kind of bulky. So naturally, it cleans the rail up when you have a really well full board. And then, maybe lastly, I think fin position's really important too. Everything's important. It all adds to the big thing, but like, that's when I'm shaping, I go in that order. I'm like, okay, make sure my rocker's perfect. Okay, make sure my rail curve is perfect. Okay, the foiling. Okay, make sure that concave is really clean through the whole thing. Okay, then the rail and whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean it gets really technical and it sometimes sounds like you're speaking Chinese to me.
Well, it's just so funny because
it's
like
crazy,
I literally
yeah.
was surfing this step up I made for sunset and for pipe, and it's really like a radical shape. It doesn't look like a normal step up, doesn't feel like a normal step up, which is what I want. I don't want it to feel like a step up. Step ups are like typically stiff and like hard to maneuver and like chattery. And so it was funny that I was surfing out there and I was like, oh my God, the back fin is too far back. And it was literally like a quarter of an inch to a half an inch too far back. And I was like, Keith, can we reroute this box and have it ready by the weekend so I can go to Oahu with it? And sure enough, they're doing it right now. That's why they're the best to work with, because they're so psyched on just the development side. So I'm literally sometimes modifying, the boards after the fact. Sometimes you want to add a little bit of edge, and it's about that progression. The board itself felt good, but I'm like, gosh, I could have a little more zing if I just had that fin forward just a little bit. And that comes down to like at home, maybe you're not going to shape a board, or the fins are where they're set. You could have a good board, but with bad fins is going to feel like a bad board. So
For sure.
try a more pivoty fin, which is a more upright fin, is going to make it feel more, loose in the pocket and maybe a little bit less drivey, but it's going to give you that like radius of a turn. A little more swept is going to feel good. If your board is too squirrely, like too rockered out, you're going to probably want something like that. And then, but it feels still too stiff because the back fin, get one size smaller. Like I never stay with the same size fin on even the same board. Small waves, I'll use larges. Like step ups, I'll go medium fins. Big waves, I'll go small. John, Kelly Slater, I talk to them all the time about it. Like John literally rides the production kids JJF fin on his Sunset, Haleiwa, and pipe boards. I mean, the fins are tiny, but you're going faster, so there's more atmospheric pressure, there's more lift, because you need less surface area to create the same amount of lift when you're going slow and you need a bigger fin. It's like foiling, foiling a bigger wing for when you're going slower, and in softer waves, bigger, you go way smaller. It's the same thing, and those guys are constantly changing fins. Like John probably nearly equals me in the amount of fins we have, which is like close to 1,000. I walked into his garage last winter, and there's just 1,000 fins he was testing, and they all have different angles. They have all these little tricks and things, and he'll show up to like the Trestles event with a bag of like 5 different sets of fins, and he'll pick the fins for the day. And you never hear about that, but literally that's what he'll do. And sometimes you do go asymmetrical. You put one style of fin on one side and another style on the other. And it's more like maybe like profile, which is like the curve across the fin, versus like maybe the template, which is like, the outline. So yeah, you could go, it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah. The other night, Sarah and I came over for dinner, and we walk in and you have a Dremel on the kitchen counter, and you're like chipping away at this fin. We don't talk about exactly what you were doing.
It's
some secret technology, but it was pretty funny. It's the babies were asleep in the next room, and it was just so loud.
It was so fun.
Molly's like, put that thing away.
Well,
like,
if you get the kids used to hearing loud noises and they can sleep through anything, then you can go travel and it's easy. So the girls are used to it. But that being said, it's like, I take huge inspiration from, I think why I like watching Formula One, MotoGP, and the America's Cup is, maybe I'm not ever going to be a MotoGP rider or a Formula One driver, or even, big yacht sailor. But I love the technology side of things. I love when, pure athleticism meets the highest technology available. And those 3 sports, especially Formula One and America's Cup, spend the most money of any sport on earth to just develop basically the tool for the driver to drive. And so I look at the wings, I look at all their aero they're doing, and I'm like, how could that apply to what I'm doing? And I think with surfing, you're constantly fighting drag. After foiling and doing, that type of sport, you realize how much drag a surfboard creates, and how if you ride away for a minute, your legs are tired because it's not because you were standing on a board for a long time. It's literally because your board is sticky. It's like, it's draggy. It's imagine taking a boogie board down a hill with no rain, for example. When you have as a kid, you go down grass hills and you start flying when there's water, because you're riding on top of surface of water, and that water is disconnecting you from the grass, and water on water contact is the fastest way to go across water. And so you're always trying to find how to create a slight layer on the bottom of your board so that there is like this water on water contact. The hard part is when you're on a board, it's a mixture. I would say it's probably like 2/3 water and then 1/3 air. And that turbulence of air is touching the bottom board is just drag. You can feel it under your feet because you feel the surface tension of water. And so I'm trying to find ways to eliminate that. And there's obviously like coatings you can put on. There's types of sanding you can do. And depending on the water density and where you go and the particulates that are in the water, you can sand your board or your foil differently so you can get the most out of it. And if I was totally on it, every time I'd go to Nazaré, I would sand my board differently than I would sand my board here. It was just wet sand, it's really quick. But quick, and I mean like might take me an hour and a half to get it perfect. But there's like these little channels that you could put into the bottoms of the boards, and these like maybe little, I don't know why you call them fins. They're just these little nubs that can help direct water flow to eliminate drag. Literally, that's what I was doing in my living room when you guys came over for dinner. I was just like putting things on my fins and taking things off that would allow less drag without ruining the physical performance of the fin.
Yeah, and then it was so fun. After dinner, we got like talking about my boards, and we're nerding out over it, and kind of came to the realization that I needed maybe a little bit longer of a board than say what you ride, because you made me the identical size to you. We're talking about just like foot placement, and maybe if I get a longer board, I'll widen my stance a little bit, which is what I want to do. And you got so amped up on it, you just instantly run over, open the computer, and Molly's like, "What are you doing? Like, we're going to bed. Don't get on the freaking shaper right now."
I basically like I'll design a board on the computer once a night because I'll get an idea. But it's nice because I hand shaped the first board for that model. I usually do that, whereas like I'll hand shape it, then try it, get it scanned, know what I'm going to change, and then adjust it. And it's nice because then you could really, it's a tune in. And I don't like going straight from scratch from the computer because I feel like the computer, it looks different than when it gets shaped. It always looks different. And it's you have to learn as a designer, as a shaper, to understand what it's going to translate from the computer to that. I don't have that experience. I've only literally made 17 boards in my entire life, or shaped 17 boards. So in this case, it was really nice because I had this base file that I shaped for myself that worked really good. And I look at your surfing, I'm like, okay, I can get the exact same board, the base, the guts of what makes my board really good. I could give it to you. I'm just going to extend it 1.5 inches from 5'10" to 5'11.5. And then, for your type of surfing, when I watch you, you're a lot lighter on your feet a little bit, and you're maybe a little skatier in your approach. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm pretty heavy-footed, and I'm always looking for a board to hold a little longer, because a normal shortboard that I've gotten, if I push, I always break the tail loose, and that's from years of pushing a giant board windsurfing or giant board stand-up paddling or a gun. So I'm used to just being super heavy-footed, and it's to my detriment in small waves. But you're very nimble and light foot, so I was like, okay, what can we change there without killing what makes the board special? And that's like a little more rail curve by the fins is going to loosen it up. Maybe I added just barely a little more tail rocker. And I made the board narrower. I ride maybe 19 inches wide. I made yours 18 3/4. And those little things. So the board itself's pretty much the same, but I just tuned it into you. And we'll see if you like it or not.
I can't wait to try it.
It's really easy to, once you get to a certain point, it's really easy to shape for myself because I know what I want. But to shape for other people, like, it's a little harder because it's kind of, you're sort of guessing. Like, well, I think this is what they want, but everyone.
It's been pretty darn cool to see some of the other like Maui pros over here trying your boards. Like Imai tried your board one of the days.
Yeah.
Cody Young tried your board, and they both were like, the second I saw them, the first thing they said was like, "Dude, I tried your brother's board. It was insane." And I was just like, dang, like like, if those guys are saying that stuff, like they try how many hundreds of boards a year, like it definitely means something. So you're on the right track. And I just think back to like when we were kids, I think you've like, this is so on brand for you, because even when we were like 10 years old watching the strap videos, you're literally sitting on the couch, sewing little sails.
Yeah.
Like you used to make these sails that were this big, like windsurf sails.
Mm-hmm.
And I was digging around in Dad's office the other day. I was looking for something, I think some like DVDs for the podcast, and I like opened a box and I saw all of them. I was like, holy crap! Like this crap's been going on since you were freaking 12.
Yeah,
I'm just nerding out extremely hard on these things. I think it's sick. It's hilarious though.
It's nothing new for me. I think for some people that obviously aren't behind the scenes think it's like, oh, you're just trying to shape. And a lot of shapers I kind of got that vibe from them, but it's like, no, I think the best thing and the worst thing is like, you know, when you haven't done it yet and you're young and people tell you, oh, well, you can't do it because I've been, you know, that person's been doing it for 25 years. I'm like, okay, yeah, but I just threw that all out the window. I'm like, I'm not shaping for anyone else. I'm doing this for fun, and I know what I want, and I'm just going to make it. And I started doing it, and turns out everyone seems to be liking the way it looks under my feet and asking to try it. And it's like, you know, that at the end of the day, you just kind of got to like know when to take feedback and then know when not to. And when I first started sending boards in, I've been working on this real crazy bottom contour to try to maximize the feeling of a single concave while having this insane stability in choppy conditions. And it ends up creating sort of a spine down the center, a V spine sort of thing. I'll break it down when I have the board in my hand at one point. But I remember when I went to the Glasser, they were like, oh, well, the other shapers, they don't do double concaves like this, you know, you got to do this, that. And I just was like, in through one ear, out the other. And turns out, what do? I go out there and the board is so sick. And it's exactly what I envisioned. And you got to just stay true to your vision. And between yourself, you know, you could be like, okay, well, that didn't work. I'm going to adjust it. And yeah, so far, it's everything that I've done has sort of worked. But I did start from a very conservative approach. I didn't go crazy with, I need hips on my rail, on my, you know, outline. And I need to like have, you know, tail kick. And I'm trying to, and the thing is I purposely never watched YouTube more than just understanding, okay, how do they even just hold the sandpaper in their hand? I didn't listen to even how they did the rail. I was just like, how do you even hold it? You know, or I'd go up to Keith and he'd be shaping and I'll just walk in for 5 minutes, talk to him and kind of look at what he was doing and then leave. And the reason why is I didn't want to have any preconceived ideas on how it's supposed to look or be. It just had to be completely true from me. Because if you start designing on the computer, which anyone can go do, and it's super fun, they have templates. The problem with that is you look at the base outline, the base rocker, everything, and you start using that as your base, and you think, okay, this is how it's supposed to be, and you stop, you know, innovating from there. Like when I look at my file compared to like what a standard file looks like, it looks completely unique. And I would never have gotten there because I'd be too scared to fray away from the establishment, you know, the baseline. And that's why shaping the first board of, say, a model, like this shortboard model that I do, is really nice because when you get it scanned and you try it and it works really good, and when it's scanned, it's on the computer, you can go from there and that's your baseline because it's from you truly. It's not like you're trying to take a pre-existing thing someone else did and just change it because it'll never be good enough. You can't change what was already created very much. So it might be a little more work at the beginning, but it like pays off in the end.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's going to be fun to see where you're at with it in like a year.
Well, the exciting thing right now is I have a big wave gun and then I have a big wave towing board. And that's the most critical boards I've ever shaped because they have to work. I haven't tried them yet. They're still getting finished. And so everyone say a prayer that it works and that I don't trip over my own feet. Luckily, it's all derived from the boards I've been developing and shortboarding and in windsurfing. So I should be okay.
Yeah. Here, I'll throw this comment back up. But you got support from Spain saying you're going to win the Aloha Classic. And this might be a good segue to what's going on this weekend, and maybe a good way to wrap up because I think you got to go to the contest soon.
Yeah, I think my heat starts soon.
Tell everybody just briefly what the Aloha Classic is, and what we can expect from you at this event.
So Aloha Classic is the World Championship final of the Windsurfing World Tour, where the world champions that travel all across the globe, basically get crowned champion or not. This year we have an insane race. There's 4 guys that can win the world title. I think the women's title's already been decided back in Germany, but on the men's side, it's going to be just crazy. And Hokipa's my home spot, and I'm definitely a jack of all trades, maybe a master of none, like good enough at all of them, but not like the best. And the reason why I say that is because I've been windsurfing Hokipa my whole life, and I've gotten close to winning out at Aloha Classic, which I feel like I should have by now because it's literally my home spot and that's where I mainly windsurf. But I've gotten 3rd, and I've been top 5 a bunch of times. The sailors are so darn good, and it's what they focus on. And every time I see them out there, I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I even match that? I think this year's been pretty unique because there's a lot of guys that have a lot of pressure, and that can change how you perform versus free sailing. And for me, I took it a different approach. I have just I've never wanted, I have no pressure. I'm just going out there and sailing, having fun because no one's out, and trying to put the best show I can. And what's unique for this year versus any other year is I shaped my own 2 windsurfboards that I'm competing on. And then I had Keith and at Quattro, they built it in the strongest, best windsurfing construction you can imagine. So that was a really cool collaboration. But I basically built myself a shortboard with foot straps and a mast track for my sail. Like, I was just like, you know what? I've been trying to surf my windsurf gear for so long, and I've just been fighting the way I do it because windsurfing, you have a much narrower stance. It's pretty far back on the tail. The rocker is so different. The outline is really far forward towards the nose, and it's a very narrow tail. I did everything the opposite. Super narrow nose, wide tail. Rocker is completely in a different spot. Stance is my shortboard stance. And my sail is meant to get me on the wave. And then I really got to work with Goya Windsurfing, the guys that make my sails, to make a sail that just dies in my hand once I'm in the wave. So I use it to get on the wave, but once I'm on the wave, the sail itself goes very neutral, so there's not a lot of apparent wind that's in there. It's just very stable. And so I think with that sort of equipment, it gives me the ability to ride the way I really want to ride and not fight my equipment. And I feel like in the past, I haven't been able to really ride the exact way I want because I've been surfing so much, and then I end up just sort of fighting my windsurf gear a little bit. And finally, I feel like I have the equipment where I can just go and do what I really love to do, is just really surf the wave. And guys, this event comes down to winning on tricks. It's really a freestyle wave contest. Like, if you're not throwing a goiter and wave 360 every other wave in your heat, you're not going to win. I spent a lot of time dialing in both the wave 360 and the goiter, which is like an inverted 360 cork thing. And so I have that in the back, but I really want to do some really vertical big turns and try to do four or five big hits versus just 2 big hits like you would normally do with the traditional windsurf boards. So I'm just looking inward, and I'm just excited to do this. And unfortunately, on this, quest, you end up coming up against friends. And last year, I beat one of my good windsurfing pals, and it kind of killed his world title hopes. But it is part of he was crying on the beach, and the first person, I tried to be the first person to be like, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. But hey, it's windsurfing competition, and if you can't beat me, then I don't know what you're doing. But anyway, no, I'm really excited for the event. We have good conditions. The winds are light, and if the waves were big, it just makes my life a little easier because I can just focus less on competing and more just wave riding.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys want to check it out, I think PWA windsurfing, you could type it on YouTube, and
they have a live stream on YouTube too.
Yeah, the live stream's been good. It's like really cool action. If you've never checked out windsurfing, it's really fun to watch the contest because it's high flying. They're doing big tricks. It's not like surfing competition where you're just basically watching some ducks sit for like 20 minutes until they finally catch a wave.
Movement.
It's like,
yeah,
it's constant. It's pretty cool. So check it out. Where can they find when you're going to be going? Is it on their website?
Yeah, it's on the live. If you just type in Aloha Classic windsurfing event, it should just pop right up, and then you basically can click on that, and they'll just have like the bracket. I think I go, I don't know actually. I should probably figure that out. No, I go in like a couple of hours. I got to go to the beach and rig up 2 sails and get my 2 boards connected and stuff. But The live feed's pretty fun. They have sick drone, and because it's windsurfing, they can keep the drone on the guys the whole time, and it's really up close and some sick action. And now we're in round 5, so the next, if I win this heat, I'll go to the quarters, and if I do that, you could, semifinals, finals. That being said, from this point on, you have the world's best out there competing for a world title. So it's like, geez, the level is just stupid high.
Yeah, that's going to be sick. And definitely get up there. Don't miss your heat. But thanks for everybody that tuned in today. We got way more viewers than I expected. I think we're averaging
Did we get 7?
80 in here, which is cool. Huh?
7 viewers?
No, 80.
Whoa, that's way better than I thought. I thought we'd have at
right
least
now there's
7.
90 people. Yeah, so it's pretty good. And let us know if you liked this format. It's definitely something, like, we're still in our early stages of doing this podcast, and we're in it for the long haul, so we might as well just try things as we're early on. But I had a good time with it. I don't know about you, Kai.
I had a lot of fun. It kind of felt little bit looser, which is awesome.
Yeah, we could kind of jump around topics, and you guys could ask us all the off the wall questions and everything.
But our next podcast, I'm not gonna say who it's with. Oh wait, we never answered the question real quick. We never answered the question who's my tow partners at Nazaré.
Oh, do you want to drop that live?
Yeah,
right
I don't
now?
know. Did anyone type anything in? Oh, they all said Nathan, right?
I think someone might have guessed it right.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, it's Ian Walsh.
Yeah. Let's go. That'll be sick.
Ian Walsh, me and him, and he's just, he's just one of the OGs. He's the absolute man. So I have a ton of confidence with him because he's so calculated. If I get him on a sick wave, he's going to obviously perform at the highest level. And I've grown up knowing him and even towing with him and doing a bunch of stuff. So, if I couldn't do it with Lucas, my top 3 picks of all time would be, Ian, Ridge, and Lucas. And so I'm in good hands right now.
Yeah, I really want to come on that trip and spot for you guys.
You'll be our spotter this time.
Our trips with Ian to Nazaré in particular are the things.
We'll do a podcast
with
him when we're there. It would be the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, we'll break everything down, and he's just such a legendary guy. Like, I love hanging out with Ian.
Yeah.
He's so cool. But yeah, that'll be sick, and hopefully that comes around pretty soon. Hopefully there's a big swell and we can fly out there.
But the next podcast, one more thing. The next podcast, we're going off island, and we're going to do something super cool with a legend. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. We're psyched. We're going over there to hopefully compete in the Sunset event.
North Shore Oahu, here we come.
There's a lot of legends over there, so we gotta lock some of these guys down. It's gonna be sick. And this particular guy probably hasn't done an interview or talked about surfing in maybe a couple decades, so it'll be freaking cool.
Yeah, we're pulling him out. We gotta hear his lore.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll see you guys later.
Aloha.